Well, hello! Welcome back to my channel. Joshana here to talk about some friggin' stats. It's that time of year. Time for stats. End of year stats, which I thoroughly enjoy. And this year I did all my little graphs and everything in Canva, so yay for that, because I think they're fun. So for 2020, my Goodreads goal, which moving forward will be my Storygraph goal, or just my yearly reading goal, but I set it at 50. In previous years, I've read 75 to 110-ish books. The most I read was the first year I was on BookTube, and I a little bit did overkill. I did all the readathons, all the things, and I think I read also a lot of graphic novels that year. Read a little bit less in 2018, and then in 2019, I think I read 80 or something. And that year I had my Goodreads goal set at 75, I want to say. But yeah, I just decided, I'm going to settle down and just make it a little easier for myself. But in 2020, I don't know, I just decided I'll make it 50 because I know I'll read at least 50. And I don't really care that much how many I read, honestly. I just want to be consistently reading, hopefully things that I love. So yeah, I set it at 50 and I ended up reading 92 books this year, more than last year or in 2018, I want to say. I'm going to scooch over just slightly so I have a little more room on the screen for the graphs. Oh, by the way, isn't this super cute? So it's a print that my best friend of 25 years got me. And it's all books, there's little titles on it. You can't see it in the camera, of course, but there's book titles and they're all books with female protagonists. And I was like, that's so cute. And it's our favorite colors, so. The number of books read per month. Here's the breakdown for that. The purple is the number of books, and then the little orange bit is how many books I DNF'd. So we can see that June was rough times. Oh God, I only completed 2 books in June, and I DNF'd 2 in June. The month where I DNF'd the most was August, and there's a couple months where I didn't have a DNF, so that's fun. But yeah, most months I was around 7, 9, 9, 9, 8, 2, 8, 10, 10, 8, 5, and 8. So around 8 books is about average for me per month. And then books acquired versus books unhauled. So books acquired, I do count ebooks as well because it's a book that I own, just not in a physical format. I acquired 83 books this year. Oh, geez, oh, Pete. I try not to buy that many books. A lot of them were books I already owned, so I'll get into that in a second. And then I unhauled 49 books, which is a fair amount. So of the 83 books, 62 were new to me, books that when I purchased them, I had not read them. Of the 83 that I acquired, 46 I ended up reading. And of the 62 that were brand new to me, I read 27 of them. So the percentage breakdown is 75% were new to me, which again, that's way higher than I would like for it to be. I try to only buy books that I have read or by authors that I have read and know I love. However, 2020 was the year of retail therapy. Of the 83 total that I acquired, 55% have been read now or were read when I got them. And of the 62 that were new to me, 44% of those have been read. Not super great. I would like for the percentage of the ones that were new to me to be a little higher that I read, but it's whatever. So of the 83, 10 of those were ebooks, and then like I said, I unhauled 49. So I ended up with 24 additional physical books on my shelves than what I had at the start of the year. So all in all, not terrible, honestly. I'm pretty okay with that. I definitely want to read more. That's one of my goals for 2021 is to get my owned TBR down to about 40 books, which will be about cutting it in half from what it is currently. So I got to be careful about buying stuff, and I got to be careful about reading things from the library when I have options here. Also, since I think last year is when I started doing this, I keep track of the money I spend on books and then money that I save by using the library. And I still saved more money than I spent technically, because this year I ended up spending $520, and I did actually technically spend more than that, but about 200 of it was money from that stimulus check that we got back in March. When did we get that? I don't know. Most of it I used towards bills and like saving some of it, but I did spend a bit on some books. And I didn't count that because when I'm talking about money spent, I'm talking like money from my regular income that I then go spend on books. If that makes sense. Like from my paychecks, the money I earn from working my job that I take and then spend. Someone wanted to like get all nitty gritty with me. Well, actually, you still spent that money. Like, yeah, no shit. I'm aware of that. Why do you care how I'm keeping track of this? I don't understand. So yeah, after that being taken out, I spent $520 of my own dollars from my paychecks on books. But I saved $636 by using the library. I was very fortunate also. I am always fortunate, I feel, for living where I live and having a great library system. The Phoenix library system is awesome. And it was shut down entirely for about a month and a half, I want to say, where all the libraries in Phoenix were, you can't get books, you can't come pick up books, no go. And because I don't read a lot of ebooks or audiobooks, I wasn't really utilizing the library then. But then many of them did open up for curbside pickup. So through most of the year, I was still able to get books from the library. And I know some people weren't comfortable doing that, even if you were able to. Totally understand. I was comfortable with it. I trusted what they were saying as far as what they were doing to sanitize and all of that. So I did utilize the library a fair amount still this year. So yay for that. Very, very lucky. I also, with the money spent, I spent more money than I normally would. I think just, 2020, like I said, some retail therapy may have been happening. Of like, I just want something new. I've mentioned this in a different video recently. I was also very, very fortunate this year to keep my job, and the business that I work for, the company I work for, we actually are pretty well set up for pandemic style needs. So the company did pretty well this year. So my job was very secure, and I got a raise partway through the year. So I did have a little bit more wiggle room financially. Very fortunate in that regard. And that is why this year around the holidays, I tried to do a little more gift giving with Amazon wish lists for others and things like that, and with donations. This year I've become a monthly donator for a couple of different organizations. I kind of rotate them out. So getting into the details on the books that I read this year. Diverse reads. So I have the option of yes, no, or ish for each book that I read, whether or not it is diverse. What I consider to be yes is the main character is from a marginalized community. The themes of the book are dealing heavily with issues of marginalized communities. No is the main character is plain old white bread. Most of the side characters are as well. Or if it's a fantasy where I can't really tell, or they do seem to be mostly white and then there's like no queer characters, things like that, I would consider that just a hard and fast nah. And then ish would be maybe the main character is pretty bland and white bread, but most of the secondary characters are of marginalized communities. Or maybe it's not exactly on the page specified that the main character is XYZ thing, but all signs point to it type of deal. So we had 60% that were yes, which is pretty solid. I would like that to be a little higher. 18%-ish, where it's like, you could kind of consider this diverse, but also not totally. And then 21.9% were no. So I definitely want to get that no a little smaller next year, but I'm okay with this. I do read some, adult fantasy by, the white male authors that maybe don't have a ton of diversity. And I mean, I enjoy those series, but I definitely aim to read more diversely. For the age range, this year I definitely read way more adult than in previous years. 70.6% adult versus 26.6% young adult. New adult was like 1.8%, and then I think there's a middle grade in there. Yeah, I had one middle grade read. Whereas in 2019, we can see that I had more young adult, barely, but I did have 50.5% young adult, and then 39.8% adult. A little more middle grade too. I had 7.5. So yeah, I read way more adult this year. I've gotten away from young adult a little bit. And again, as I've said many times, this is not the channel to be like, yeah, young adult sucks, because it doesn't. I've just been leaning more towards adult for whatever reason. For genre, largely fantasy, no surprise there, 65.5% fantasy. 10% sci-fi, 8.2% nonfiction, which makes me happy because that has been a goal for many years to read more nonfiction, and I have this year. Romance and classics, both at 4.5%. Historical fiction at 3.6%. And then over here, what is that one? That is, contemporary. I don't know what the percentage is, but I only had 2 contemporary reads. And then general fiction and memoir both were 0.9%, less than 1%. And that's, I think, around the same as in 2019. Oh, no, I had a little bit less fantasy. I had 53% fantasy in 2019 and way more contemporary, 14.3%. I have just accepted that contemporary is often not my thing. Young adult contemporary, there are a couple that I really enjoy. I point as if you can see, but you cannot. But yeah, every now and then there's like a standout young adult contemporary that I really, really love. Various ones where they're standouts and I love them. But overall, it's not a genre I really enjoy. Same thing with contemporary romance. I love fantasy romance. I love some romance in a book. But contemporary romance is often, adult specifically, is often just a miss for me. And so this year I didn't try so hard to check them out and read more of them. So, but then the rest of them are, I mean, I have read a little bit less historical fiction this year, definitely less like general fiction, and sci-fi was right around the same. I do also keep track of subgenre, but that pie graph it's just like splintered into like a bajillion little things, because with fantasy, under the umbrella of fantasy, and even sci-fi, I split up fantasy and sci-fi because they are very different things for me. But like under the fantasy umbrella, you know, there's paranormal, there's magical realism, there's historical fantasy, there's political fantasy, there's just all the things. I'm not going to show you that because, like I said, it's very... Paranormal was the highest, and that's because of the Sookie Stackhouse series that I reread this year. This year I started keeping track of what number in a series a book was, or if it is in a series. So we have if it's the start of a series, if it's in the middle of one, the end of one, or if it is a standalone or a bind up. I read, I think, 1 bind up this year. Bind ups, like a short story anthology, something like that, is not typically my jam, but I did read Dominion, and I quite enjoyed that. And this one's divvied up pretty evenly. I read a fair amount of standalones, 38.2%, and then 30% of the books that were part of a series were the start of it, 25.5% were in the middle of it, and 4.5% were the end of a series. And then, if they were a series, I kept track of if I'm going to continue or not. There's yes, no, maybe, or it's finished. So 68.2% were yes. I counted, and I think I'm in the middle of like 35 different series right now. It's fine. And then no, 21.2%, where I just didn't care anymore. And maybe only 1.5%. And then finished 9.1%. For the format, I did this a little differently this year. I previously was like ebook Libby, ebook Hoopla, ebook NetGalley. This year I just made it a general physical owned, physical library, audiobook, and ebook. And 51.8% were my physically owned books, 29.1% were from the library, and then 10.9% ebook and 8.2% audio. And I think that, I did not, but I think it's about the same. It wasn't super different from last year. I think last year I read slightly more from the library than this year. And then I also kept track this year of if it's a reread or not. So this year, 78.9% of what I read was not a reread, so most of it, which is understandable. But I did have 19.3% that were a reread, my first time rereading, and then 1.8% was my second time rereading. I think that was only one book. No, 2 books. And then for my ratings for the year, so actually 14.9% were DNFs. And then I did rate 2 books each, 1 star and 2 star. And so that's 2% for each of those. Those were Sookie books, unsurprisingly. And then 2.5 ratings, 7.9. Many of those were Sookie books also. 3 stars, as usual, is the one that I rate most books that, 22.8%. 3.5, 12.9%. 4 stars, 14.9%. 4.5, also 14.9%, and then 5, 7.9. Compared to last year, which was actually right around the same. I didn't have any 1 stars last year, and I had like 1% too. I read slightly less 4 stars this year, slightly less 3 stars, a few more 4.5 though, and a few more 5. So yay, and the exact same percentage of DNFs. Obviously, I would like to have more in the 5-star range. I'm very stingy with 5 stars, and I don't know why. I'm changing up my rating system a bit in 2021. There will be a video to come on that later, and I'm hoping that will maybe help me be a bit less stingy with those. And there we have it. Those are the stats for the year. I do actually also keep track of the race of the author, and I didn't make a thing for that though. It was a bit more varied this year. I read more from Asian authors, Indigenous authors. I want to up those a bit more though. Still primarily white. I did also read a bit more from Black authors, but yeah, the large majority is still white. And I mean, some of them might be also queer, etc., but I just keep track of that. As always, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.